we had a client that was probably one of our top 5 biggest clients kind of during our growth stage. And this client was pretty terrible to our team. They were just unreasonable. And we have a core value of embrace relationships as a business. And it was coming up for renewal. And we started this discussion again. We said, look, we keep losing people on this team. Not only do they quit the account, they leave the company because they're so burnt out from it. And we were in a management meeting. We looked around and everyone was kind of beating around the bush. And finally, someone was like, look, this clearly violates our value of embrace relationships. So the question is, are we willing to kind of take the hit? And ultimately we did. We told them we weren't going to renew. It was a big loss. Look, it had some job implications and having to move people around. But I think employees were so impressed, and we told them like how they're treating people is not acceptable. This violates our core value. We're walking away from over $1 million a year. And I think that made a difference for people. And look, this highlights a clear point, which is living to your values has a cost. It usually has a short-term cost. And in this world of all this short-term stuff, people want to be on the right side in the short term when they should really be focused on being on the right side in the long term. But you shouldn't think it's free. You don't get any credit, in my book at least, when your values in the river are flowing in the same direction, right? You get credit when the river's going one way and your values are uphill. And one of my favorite stories of this is actually the guys at Basecamp. And I don't know if you know this story, but look, and this is your personal core values, not even company. So it's 2022. We're at the height of political activism in the workplace. DHS and Jason Fried have built this company doing the exact opposite, probably why I like them, of conventional wisdom. They have not raised money. They have a remote work team. They've done all the things that software companies aren't supposed to do. And politics is like taking over their Slack channels. And they looked at them and they're like, this isn't who we about. This is divisive. We hate it. We don't like it. We're basically like banning politics at work. And we're going to let everyone know. And this is before Elon Musk owned Twitter, and Twitter was like a vehicle of cancel culture. And they just said to the world, look, you are free to leave and whatever, but we're not doing politics at work. And people came after them, like tried to cancel them. You are on the wrong side of history. And they're like, look, we're a software company that builds project management software for teams. We think that's what we should focus on. And they were like, look, we would rather lose the company and go home than do this. It's just not who we are. We don't like it. Like, it's great if you want to do this outside of work. So the cancel comes for them and, they kind of weather the storm. And a week or two later, business isn't that much impacted, even though everyone's telling them they're going to be on the wrong side of history. And, then weeks and months later, tons of applications come in. And it turns out there's a lot of people who'd like to work at a company that's not political. And 4 years later, they are thriving. They have the best employees they ever have. It's great. And a lot of these other companies that jumped, virtue signaling into political activism are not only having problems with their product and stuff that they didn't pay attention to, but they've made a mess of their culture. And so it sucked for them in the short term, right? But now everyone's calling them and saying, man, you guys were right. And you did that at the hardest time. And I have a ton of respect for you. And so that's what it tends to look like. It doesn't look... It's not fun in the short term.
I like your mindset, Robert, because you're looking at the core values of the family, which the family, as you know, in so many cultures, because you travel as well. I mean, that's the community. I work a lot with indigenous people. I go a lot to Africa. They're into tribes. And there's something about having that group, being from the inner city. You better have your group that protects you. And the family is so, so important. So it's like you've taken these ideas from the family, but also into the workplace. And I also love how you challenge some of the bigger companies, even by name. We won't mention them today unless you want to. But you challenge some of the bigger companies by name for almost having this mission statement on their whiteboard of what their core values are. And you mentioned one of them in one of your talks. And then you showed how they did the complete opposite. Okay.
Yeah, that was. So, I think that was Enron. They're deceased, so we can talk about them.
It was 100% Enron. Yes. And so is that the revolutionary in you, or what part of Robert is that in you that challenges like that?
I like to challenge things, and I just don't like BS, right? I like people who are authentic and are aligned between what they're thinking, what they're saying, and what they're doing. Which, look, I may not agree with it, but at
Yes.
least I'm like, I can respect people who it's the same. Like, you are who you are. You're not. I mean, it takes a lot of work to think one thing, say another thing, and do another thing. My journey in core values started with the company core values before I even realized the personal core values as I was building a business. And I was not a believer in core values. I saw all this crap written on all the walls that I walked into these companies. I took pictures of it. No one behaved that way. No one acted that way. But then I actually started to see some great companies. And I started, again, looking at Southwest and some of the things that they'd done. And Herb Kelleher saying, when they said to Herb, how did you make more money than the entire airline in 20 years? And then, by the way, I knew a lot about their model. I knew about how they turn planes in the Boeing 737 and the off-city airports. And he just said culture. And I
Yes.
was like, huh. So I went and looked up Southwest core values, and they were really different. And if you hear all these stories of
Hmm.
Southwest employees bringing people home and putting them up and doing all this stuff, they were actually just following those behaviors. Wow, wow our customers and show love and things that are. And United was like, we fly right, we fly together, we fly whatever. And then United dragged a guy off a plane and beat him up rather than give him $800 thing for bouncing his ticket, right? Versus a Southwest employee had someone's son who was sick. She took the guy off the plane, rerouted him, sent him to the hospital, sent him a meal, did all this stuff. And neither of their employee manuals had anything about how do you deal with the fact that you have too many people
Yeah.
on the plane, you got to drag someone off. It was something about the culture. So I started to look at companies who actually had core values that sounded different, but they were operationalized in all aspects of their business. And it's probably 1% to 2% of companies, but those are the great companies. They say, look, these are the behaviors that we reward here. And we're all we've got a little puppy, and how do we train her? It's treat or no. We're all kind of humans at the end of the day. We respond to incentives, whether they implicit or explicit around that a boy, that a girl, or don't do
Yeah.
that. And so the problem is in most organizations, it says crap like integrity, respect, and whatever on the wall, but that's not the behaviors that the culture is reinforcing.
I love it. Okay. I'm going to read a question. In a remote first world, how do you foster connection and belonging?
It has to be more intentional, right? I've run a fully remote company for, it's 18 years now. The company's been doing that. And so we've gotten pretty good at it. But there are some downsides, right? You miss some of the water cooler moments. In training, you miss I can go listen to Tim, our venerable sales leader, and just listen to 4 hours of
Yeah.
calls and what he's doing. So you have to be more intentional, and you have to create those spaces. But I think what people realized during COVID was it was the great equalizer, right? You and I are the same size square on a thing. No one was sitting above anyone or imposing on anyone. So I think, like with anything, you need to be intentional. We always found the people who did well in a culture of freedom and flexibility. I think like that's a real important part of
Yeah.
remote. We wanted people who needed that and wanted that. It wasn't like a fourth on their list. And we built systems and processes around that. And we actually did get our employees together, and we put them in hubs, and we would go meet up quarterly, and the human connection part's important. So again, we were intentional versus what happened after the Great Resignation is everyone didn't want to lose employees, and they said, oh, you can work from home, but they had no way to support it. They didn't tell the person that, oh, the rest of this team is in the office and you're going to be the little, guy or girl up on the square. And that's going to feel a little bit weird. So this goes back to like the think, say, do. Like, do you believe in this? Are you doing it for the right reasons? Are you going to support it? Do you want to make it successful? Or is it just a recruiting gimmick right now so you don't lose people? Because almost all the companies that we lost people to let people work from home have since rescinded that policy, and we have not.
So when you look at the future of the world, not just in America, because as you know, the world is bigger than just our country.
It is?
And you look, yeah. Do you see it through the lens of being optimistic about where we could take this thing? Because let me give you an example.
Yeah.
I'm going to Cleveland, Ohio soon. So I was telling a friend of mine, I said, have they cleaned up that one area of Cleveland? And he said, Tim, you haven't been to that area in about 10 years. It has completely changed. I go, what happened? This company came in, this big investor came in, changed the community. And because both of us travel, we see that taking place
Yeah.
in places that were run down.
Oh, I was just in one last week, and I was like, this was like called the combat zone, and now it's like a gentrified luxury area.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you more optimistic or pessimistic about the state of the world? And can we get our core values together and kind of get in alignment?
I'm a pragmatic optimist. I think that our best days can be in front of us, but I think we need to be realistic about our challenges and talk about them and not politicize everything and make it impossible to even have a discussion. There are real challenges and real problems. And I do think that if people were clear about what they valued, then they would know which battles they actually really want to fight. Because you're willing to, if it's something you care about, you're willing to take your lumps and deal with a lot of failure. And if it's not, you'll quit at the first sign of struggle and run the other way.
Hello, it's Tim Storey. I'm in my podcast studio. I just interviewed an amazing guest. I have a really, really exciting announcement. On November 2nd, which happens to be my birthday, we're doing an event in Rancho Valencia. And this is a beautiful resort in Rancho Santa Fe, California, which is in the San Diego area. And this is all a give back. It is us coming to you because we want your vision to come to pass. It's going to be right about 250 to 300 people, carefully curated groups of entrepreneurs, to athletes, to thought leaders. It's going to be a beautiful group. So that's November the 2nd in Rancho Santa Fe. To find out more information, just go to timstorey.com. That's Story, Storey, timstorey.com. Come on, come and celebrate my birthday, November the 2nd, and watch your life become more different, better, and more magical.